Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Hi, it's Patrick O'Driscoll here. You might know me as Pods. I'd like to welcome you to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. It's the podcast we produce for the love of farming right throughout the Adelaide Hills region. And now, I'll hand over to Adelaide Hills Farm Services' very own Belle Baker. Over to you, Belle.
Hello and welcome to this month's Adelaide Hills Farmcast. Today, I'm recording at the home of Kate Phillips and James Trebilcock, who have several horses and a couple of dogs that are as big as horses at Mount Barker Springs. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Belle. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Thanks for today. It's just a beautiful place to be. You've got a wonderful home here. We're going to have a chat about what it takes to maintain your horse property a little later on, but initially I'm going to thumb my way through the Adelaide Hills Services seasonal calendar to see what small acreage farmers and property owners should be thinking about during April and the next 6 to 8 weeks. If you're new to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast, we'll divide our farm calendar into different sections to cover all the main land uses in the hills, from sheep and horses, pastures and fruit trees. And anything I'm about to discuss can be found in the show notes for this episode in your podcast player or on our website, not your website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Pull on your work boots and let's get started. Okay, we'll start out with sheep this week. This first thing goes for any lactating cows as well, but we need to make sure that our stock are getting enough feed, especially if they're pregnant or lactating. It's a funny time of year where the feed really does go down. You do need to make sure you're grazing it properly, but we just need to keep an eye on our stock if they are pregnant and make sure they've got enough feed. Now, this is something I bet Kate hasn't done yet. You need to conduct worm egg counts.
Belle, I'm getting ready to do my fecal egg counts as we speak, and you think I'm joking.
Wow, well, I'm really impressed. If you didn't undertake a summer drenching program, then it is time to do your fecal egg count. This will determine whether you need to be drenching your sheep now or a bit later and what the worm burden is in your sheep right now. Now, I've had a bit of a look around and Zoetis has some wonderful information on their website and the link is in our show notes. They have some really good layman's information about why you should be drenching your cattle, what you shouldn't, and what the process would be. So one of the things I liked most about the information Zoetis is sharing is that they initially asked the fundamental question, why am I drenching? I don't know why I didn't think of this myself. Anyway, why am I drenching? They give you three broad options. The first one is to prevent animal production loss. The second one, to keep animals alive. I realise this sounds obvious, but sometimes when you're not in this space all the time, you need to be reminded of these things. And the third one is to manage pasture contamination. It's important to note that the larvae of worms can live for many months if they get some sheltering by green pastures during that warm, humid weather. And guess what? The larvae are loving the Adelaide Hills in April. There's lots of wonderful spots for them to hide and they just sit around and build up, I think would be the term I'm looking for. Not super cool for your breeding program. So I also found a wonderful piece of writing by Stephen Love, who is or was the New South Wales State Worm Control Coordinator. Now, I reckon when he started out in life, he didn't go, you know what, one day I'm going to be the State Worm Control Coordinator. But this guy, credit, he's done a wonderful article. If you need some nighttime reading, that's what you need to be reading. Now, if we go on to fruit trees in your productive garden, I hope your garden's more productive than mine because, as you might have heard last month, my garden has been decimated by rabbits. But first and foremost, you really need to be thinking about good hygiene and cleaning up under your fruit trees. How are you going with your fruit trees, Kate?
Fail, Bill, fail.
Well, you're in good company because, yes, clearly I've had a bit of a fail this year as well. But we need to remove any fallen and rotten fruit and any prunings you've accumulated on the ground. If there's any evidence of disease burden, it doesn't matter what it is. Look, you don't need to identify it. Funny if you do, but you don't have to. You just really need to consider putting it all in a burn pile just to destroy in winter. Autumn is when you should be applying your liquid fertilisers. I don't have any fruit trees at home because, like I said, I've had a little bit of a fail, but I have been applying sea salt to my roses. So I'm going to have to apply some native fertiliser because I'm going to need a fertiliser that's low in phosphorus for natives. Unlike the rest of the garden, which can do a more mainstream, and you have fertilisers for roses, etc., but natives are a little bit precious when it comes to phosphorus, and you need to get something that's low in that. So you can't, you don't have a lot of natives here, do you?
No, we don't.
Yours is
So
a really
we don't
old
have to worry
cottage.
about being phos-free, I guess.
Right, so where I was about to say that, you can't just go and buy a bucket of fertiliser and apply it to everything. Maybe if you're like Kate, you can. And maybe that's where I've gone wrong with my native boulder garden. Okay, now the other thing you might have started to notice is that there are a few snails hanging around your property and around the edges of your kitchen garden. Now, of course, that's not happening to me because my garden has been decimated by the rabbits, but if I had any garden left, the snails would be my next problem. You've got lots of really cool spots for snails and slugs here, Kate.
Is it terrible to admit that the children enjoy the weekly snail stomp as our control method?
No, that is awesome because I am getting to I was going to say, and right, they breed rapidly after the first signs of rain. So now is the time to be vigilant. And again, they love this whole humid weather thing. But you know what? They are renowned for hiding under agapanthus. And you know what? There's a few of those in the Adelaide Hills.
Aggies.
Yeah, you've got a lot of Aggies. Or you did before the snail. No, you stomp on them. You're fine. So if you've got Aggies, you've probably got snails. Time to get out there for a good family stomping. They also accumulate in the corner of paddocks and along fence lines where they find refuge in weeds and things. Just to digress, that is where if you're actually spraying your fence lines sort of to help with fire risk reduction, you're actually getting a double bonus of stopping the attractive area for snails. After this finishes, I'll come up with a much better way to say that. Okay, funny, when I asked Pods earlier this week what type of bait he would recommend to manage snail infestations, he flippantly answered, snail bait. And I went, I'll do the funny stuff. Thanks very much.
Thanks, comedian.
Yeah, thanks. That was really helpful. You'll be pleased to know that, that's how the fight started. But after that, the conversation did improve and he did give me some slightly more, handy information. I don't know why I asked him in the first place, really. And here's where I was going to say a rather satisfying way to manage your snail burden is to go and squash them. Thanks, Kate. But of course, that's not going to be very effective when we're talking about a much larger rural area.
No.
Unless you want to send the kids off for the day doing that. Right, so the best way to manage snails in a larger area is literally to prevent them. Spray fence lines and any areas that accumulate weeds. In and around sheep and cattle yards is your classic because of the sludge that accumulates and grows weeds. And
gross.
Yeah, beautiful. Fantastic. The other option is to cultivate the ground. And this is where modern farming techniques really come with a downside. No-till or minimal tillage helps to keep nutrients in the soil, which will aid the establishment of crops and pastures. Big tick there. But it also creates a warm and inviting environment for snails and other molluscs. And it gives them plenty to eat, which is just fabulous. So it does mean you need to keep on top of this problem. There aren't really too many options for chemical control for molluscs, other than, if you talk to Pods, snail bait. And any program really should be managed by a qualified pest technician like Pods. Now, there are a few more organic and natural methods you can try to manage snails and their ugly cousins, slugs, like applying coffee grounds is one.
Oh!
Yeah,
we have lots of coffee grounds.
Right. Maybe you need to go and sprinkle them under the Aggies, Kate.
Give that a go, Bill.
Yeah, no. Actually, I'll tell you what.
It's an excuse to drink more coffee.
It is, like you needed one, yes. But there are a few others. If you just, I have got a link in the show notes with some wonderful information, and interestingly, it came from WA, but the same applies here, and it has got lots of really neat way to control snails that aren't chemical-based. I'm not going to suggest the efficacy of it, but for a small garden area, maybe it's okay. For a bigger, wider area, you're really going to have to look at something more industrial. Okay, so pastures is the next one. This is the time of year to be applying single fertilisers. Which fertiliser you're applying will depend on the results of the soil test you did earlier in the year. Remember how I told you it would be important in the last podcast to do soil testing? Yeah, well, the importance of that is coming to bear now. So most soils, and just a note here, of course, I didn't know this. I had to ask Pods because he is our pasture soils management man. I'm way off the scale as far as knowledge in this area. So I did have to be nice to Pods and ask him to help me with this bit. So most of the soils throughout the Adelaide Hills are low in phosphorus. So if you haven't done a soil test, this is your get out of jail card. We've got a few clients booked in already to spread lime in April. Lime increases the pH of the soil and this will make the trace elements more accessible. So there's phosphorus and lime. It's a good time to spread because neither of them actually rely on heavy rainfall to integrate into the soil. I think that's the thing there. It is also a good time of year to spread gypsum. Gypsum or sodium sulphate opens the soil up, making it a little bit more friable. Now, I had to ask Potty what friable means. I mean, why didn't he just use any other word that I might understand? He said it means easily crumbles. So why he didn't use the term easily crumbles is beyond me. So gypsum is often used across large acreages to break up heavy clay soils. And again, we've got a bit of that around the Adelaide Hills. On a small scale, gypsum's very handy around the home garden, if I had one left after the rabbits. The important thing for you, dear listener, to note is that like seeding and hay contractors, fertiliser spreading contractors need to be booked in early. There just aren't enough of them willing to undertake small acreage jobs here in the Adelaide Hills. And this isn't their fault at all. It just isn't financially viable for them. What we do is we encourage groups of property owners in an area to work together to come up with a schedule that works for them and book in a contractor in bulk. That way you're going to get your contractor to site when you need them, and it's much more profitable exercise for them and it will work really well for you. So hopefully that will give you a few ideas of what you could be thinking about and planning to do on your property right now. I'll be back next month with some more timely jobs for you to add to your to-do list. And don't forget, all the notes are in the show notes for this episode at adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Before I chat with Kate, Pod's caught up with Rob Murphy from the Hills and Fleurieu Landscape Board this week. Rabbits have been a hot topic in the Adelaide Hills, and we're finding that there is a lot of misinformation out there about what management techniques there are available to small acreage farmers and lifestyle property owners, and the efficacy and safety of those options. So on that note, we thought we'd go straight to the expert and get some accurate information firsthand.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us, and today we have Rob Murphy from the Hills and Fleurieu Landscape Board. Thank you very much for joining us today, Rob. Rob joins us given the unprecedented amount of interest we've had in controlling rabbits in recent months. This culminated with interest shown by local radio 891 Adelaide and Belle being asked some questions one morning. From our point of view on property here, we feel as though there's possibly a higher population than normal of rabbits at the minute. What are your thoughts on that in your travels around the Hills and Fleurieu areas?
Yeah, that's right, Pods. Throughout the hills generally, over the last probably 5 or 6 years, there's been a bit of an upswell in numbers of rabbits, and down on the plains and also through the Fleurieu. And with any pest plant or pest animal population, you do get these natural fluxes and surges, and that's where we're at the moment.
What can local landholders do to try and control the rabbits, in your humble opinion? And more so with our podcast, we're trying to target or trying to help out rural lifestyle landholders and help them answer some of their questions. What indeed can they do you believe, to try and get on top of any rabbit populations?
Yeah, in an ideal world, the first thing we should mention is, talk to your neighbours, work with your neighbours, and that's whether you're on a smaller, semi-urban block in the Central Hills, in a township, or even out on larger farming properties, working with neighbours is going to give you your best results. And with that in mind, if you can do some form of coordinated, integrated control, which would probably include a baiting program, and we're talking more than likely in the Central Hills here, a pindone baiting program, following that up with some form of harbour destruction, warren destruction, and then if any of the warrens or the harbour reopens, fumigation of warrens or burrows, those sort of programs, that's an integrated program, is going to give you your best bang for your buck.
Okay, integration is the key that I take from that statement there, Rob, and I guess that moves on. I wanted to touch on the biological controls such as calicivirus and myxomatosis. First of all, what is myxomatosis, what is calicivirus, and how do the two differentiate from one another, please?
Rightio, the myxomatosis is a virus that affects the rabbit's internal organs, as well as it's probably most evident in the swellings around the face and the eyes and that sort of thing. It's a virus that's spread by rabbit fleas, so rabbit to rabbit contact, and through mosquitoes spreading the virus as well. Yeah, affects the animal's eyes, and lethargy sets in too. So yeah, so mix is a virus that's been out there and released back in the 60s, 50s probably, and it had a big impact in the early decades. Now it's in the background. It's a virus that's still out there in the populations, but doesn't seem to have the virulence that it did, back in the 50s and 60s. So in combat to that, the authorities did their research and then brought out some of the calicivirus and the RHDV virus. They're also known as, there's a number of strains of them now out in the environment, and they're in the environment, and they also fluctuate in their virulence and their activity throughout the countryside. We don't hear of them being active a whole lot of the time, but now and again you'll get a flare up in different spots, and you'll get people reporting. Quite obvious when you come across a dead rabbit you may find on your property. It's sort of looking pretty healthy. A lot of the virus, of the calicivirus, does its work internally, affecting the intestines and the liver, and basically the rabbit is fairly healthy looking, but otherwise, just lying on its side and maybe have outstretched paws and looking pretty healthy, but otherwise, it's succumbed to the virus. Whereas the MIXI is more obvious with the head swellings, the eyes and the nose, and they generally don't. The rabbits that you find that have been infected with MIXI aren't too mobile. They're just sort of staying pretty well motionless, and maybe only moving a short distance if you disturb them.
I guess whilst we're on those biological controls, and there's many landholders on their rural lifestyle blocks who may have a pet rabbit or two, particularly with young families, so it's pretty important to remember that if they're suspicious that either myxomatosis or calicivirus are indeed favourable and working on the feral rabbit population at the time, it's very important to keep their domestic or pet rabbits indoors and well away from any ferals that may be in and around the house.
Yeah, absolutely, and both physical barriers, so having maybe fly mesh, for example, to a rabbit hutch to keep mosquitoes and other insects out of the immediate environment, but also there's a vaccine that would be available from the local vet for both MIXI and the calicivirus.
Okay, and there are some other ways in which we can control the rabbit population. Just your thoughts, good, bad or otherwise, on shooting, ferreting. You've touched on, we've certainly been pretty detailed about calicivirus and baiting, also warren destruction, fumigation, the use of phostoxin methods that you would recommend.
Yeah, certainly. We're following up with your phostoxin. So normally, if you do have warrens or burrows on your property, once you have completed your baiting program, it'd be a great idea to destroy those warrens. So you've had your initial impact on numbers, trying to destroy any harbour and warrens, therefore makes it harder for reintroducing rabbits coming in from neighbouring areas. So by doing that, destroying the warrens or burrow, if any of them reopen, that's where a phostoxin's got a role. You've got low numbers, sticking a few phostoxin tablets down the burrow and then sealing that off, hopefully will take care of those remaining few bunnies in the area. And likewise shooting too. So if you've got an infestation of rabbits through a local area, shooting alone is probably going to be fairly up against it, trying to eradicate those rabbits. Shooting alone, unless you were had free range, good access, without neighbours and issues like that, and were absolutely vigilant and onto it, every night or, very often, you're probably only going to take the top off the population with number-wise. However, if you've done your baiting program, done some warren destruction, and then using shooting, if it's applicable on your larger property, just to reduce those final numbers, I think there's a role to play there too.
What about any comments on ferreting? I know there is some people who love their ferreting. Comments there, Rob?
Yeah, ferreting certainly got a role to play. The more recent example that springs to light here was in the township of Mount Barker, where poisoning wasn't an option. Obviously shooting and the other techniques weren't an option. So local services called up the service of a ferreter, a local contractor, and they came out and removed quite a few rabbits from that warren complex. There's a number of different tools in the toolbox for rabbit control, whether it's ferreting, shooting, or the more integrated approach. They've all got a role to play, and then working with your neighbours, utilising all of those tools is going to maximise your results.
Just one thing I'd like to add, integrated pest management is the key that I'm taking from the conversation we're having this afternoon. But the use of phostoxin, our listeners and followers just need to be aware that phostoxin is indeed an S7 pesticide or insecticide, so you do need to have a ChemCert accreditation to be able to purchase that from your local reseller, and once purchased, it is a highly toxic insecticide and needs to be very, very carefully managed, treated with absolute caution, and as soon as those tablets get wet, that will increase the efficacy of the phostoxin tablet, making it so much more toxic. But anyway, I think we've covered off on the basics of rabbit population here, why we have a high population here at the minute, Rob, but thank you very much for your time today.
No worries, Pod. It's good to chat.
Good man.
That was Pods talking with Rob Murphy from the Hills and Fleurieu Landscape Board. If you'd like any more information about rabbit control methods, we encourage you to call the Landscape Board direct on 08 8391 7500 or get onto their website to find some more information. Kate.
Belle.
Thank you so much for hosting me today. This has actually been a lot of fun.
Has been, and thanks for coming along. You've brought yummy things to eat.
I know, right? So I popped into Section 28, Artisan Cheeses in Woodside. And now you might not have heard of Section 28. I hadn't until very recently. I went to a wine tasting at Simon Tolley Wines here in the Hills. The wine was fantastic, but the cheese they had on this cheese board was something else again. It was really strong flavours that I'd not had before, and I do like my cheeses, and I get a little bit bored of the old ones. I do love my Utter Delights and Woodside cheeses. Don't get me wrong. I do love them, but I have them all the time. So I was very excited to bring these to you today.
Well, thanks for bringing them.
Yeah. And look, the other thing we have is some Adelaide Hills fruit pastes that we're going to try with them. And I thought we'd do a bit of an experiment, work out which one is going to work best with which cheese.
Oh, pairings. I'm there.
I know. Forgot the wine, Kate. We are drinking coffee, but I forgot the wine.
Is it too early to start, Bill?
Today I bought Oakbank, it's called Oakbank Flavours, quince paste, and an Oakbank Flavours apple paste. And I'm sold already on, I like all the combinations, but we thought we'd do a bit of an experiment. And we've also got some Baileys, which are made in Adelaide Hills, Rosemary Lavish, which I thought would go perfectly. And so we are going to have a bit of a munch on that in a moment. Well, we have munched already, but we're going to get serious about it shortly. Let me get back to what I've got you here for, Kate. So what you're doing now is you are a personal concierge.
I am.
And I know what you have done. I mean, you helped us move house. You helped coordinate our family while we were moving house. You helped get contractors in to do some renovations. You basically managed our lives for a period there. And I can also say we couldn't have got through that without you because we were also just starting our business. But you do much more than that as well, don't you? So what's your main focus now?
So main focus now is, and I have to say with the real estate market, especially in the hills the way it is, our main focus is relocations and house sets. Yeah. So we will go in and we pack up families, whether they're moving to another home, whether they're downsizing, whether they're upsizing. We go in, we take the stress out, we'll pack them up. We meet you at the other end. We set up your home, whether it's making your beds and getting you relaxing in your first night in the home, right through to you go away for 2 nights, you come home and your house is set up, your pantry's packed, your fridge is done.
Yeah.
We try to take the stress out of moving. So that's where our main focus is. But with our business, basically we're lifestyle managers. Yeah. That sounds a bit crazy, but it's those little things you were talking about. It's, finding someone who can pick up your dry cleaning or take your dog to the vet if it's going, or to the groomers, or if it's legal and ethical, we can basically do it.
So one of the examples was we were needing to paint our house, and Kate actually helped us out. She sourced 3 or 4 different painters and then helped us do the interview of what they were like, and helped us sort of come down to a single painter to actually do the job. And it was at that point that I met the painter and went, yes, he sounds delightful and wonderful, and it took the complete stress out of everything. So it was just wonderful. The other thing that you've done at our house more recently is you reorganised all my cupboards, my pantry, my everything, and I know you enjoyed that.
I love it. It's where I get a lot of enjoyment as part of my work, but it also means that I can go in and help a family get organised so that they save time. Yeah. Hence our name. But you don't need to be hunting in the cupboard to see whether you've got a tin of baked beans or flour. We'll sort you out so that you can see that.
It was wonderful, and the storage ideas and everything was fantastic. Anyway, I digress. Here on your property in Mount Barker Springs, where we would definitely call it peri-urban. Can I talk about those 4 horses you've got out there? What are you doing at the moment out there to manage your horses? Sort of, April, autumn, what's happening out there for your horses?
Yep. So with us, things roll on a 2 to 3 month basis pretty much all year round. This is the time of year, not so much horses, but stables-wise. So we bring our horses in during winter.
You?
Yeah, we do, for a couple of reasons. One, winter and spring, I've got some ponies that are suffer from laminitis if we're not careful.
Right.
That kicks in when grasses become lush and green, few too many sugars. So we try to get those ponies off that grass.
Yes.
It also means, because we've got limited space here on this property and we do stock it quite heavily, which we're trying to destock, we give our ground a bit of a break. So we bring our horses into stables, either during the day or during the night, depending on what rotation we're on, and then day yards. So that's the sort of stuff that we're prepping at the moment. We're making sure that so all of the old bedding has come out of our stables down to the floor level, and they've been rebedded.
So, Kate, that tells me you've been listening to my last podcast on Maintenance March.
Absolutely, we love a Maintenance March, ready for April.
Sorry to interrupt.
Bring on autumn. But look, April's also the time when we worm. So you talked about fecal counts before, fecal worm counts. So we'll be, this is a fun job. We'll be collecting some horse manure this week, taking it into our vet and getting them to do an egg count for us, just to make sure that the worming that we're going to do for our horses in the next 4 weeks is the correct wormer, but that we need to worm.
So I didn't include that in my work. I was talking sheep and cattle.
You talked worm horses as well?
About horses. I do apologise.
You can do it more regularly for horses. So horses, we tend to worm our horses every, and there's a little bit of discussion, but every every 2 to 3 months. So 8 to 12 weeks we worm our horses regularly all year round. It helps us with weight, worm burden we don't want. I've got some older horses, so keeping our worm burden down means that they hold weight better, which is all good. So April for us is getting ready for the cooler months. It's also making sure we've got rugs ready for our horses, because we do rug, because I'm a bit lazy. I don't want to go out and groom a horse for a long time before I ride. I can strip a rug off and give it a quick brush and jump on without it being a mud pig.
Yes.
But that sort of stuff. It's also time our horses are due for their teeth to be done. So they're done every 6 months. So we do those just before the lead into winter.
Kate, I'm really impressed, because I knew you my go-to girl for horses, but you are really, really right up on that whole responsible horse ownership. I see a lot of other people around the hills that perhaps don't put quite, or maybe they do put the care in, I just don't see it.
You don't see it. But it has to be regular. And that's what I think sometimes people who are new to small land holdings and potentially new to horse ownership sometimes are surprised by, I guess. And that is that, the farrier comes every 8 weeks. The dentist comes every 6 months. You need to have a good vet on standby, because horses, if one's going to get sick, it's going to get sick on a Sunday night at 11 p.m.
Yes, of course.
It's having things ready. It's being as prepared as you can, so that if something does go wrong, you're as best prepared as possible.
And April for me, and for a lot of people here in the hills, means Oakbank races.
Oof.
I know, right? Lots and lots of fun. Now, for the last couple of years, Adelaide Hills Farm Services have been sponsors of the Oakbank races, and this year's no different. I'm sure people who own the horses that are racing are getting very prepared. We're getting prepared by booking tables and organising friends and
getting our outfits ready.
Kate, what do you? Have you thought about this?
Oh, Belle, I'm ready to go.
Oh, of course you are. So good. All right. Now we're going to head out shortly, and we're going to clean a trough together.
We are.
So, okay, I know I'm being silly here, but anyone who knows me knows that it'll actually probably be Kate doing the hard work and the wet work, not me. But Kate, you haven't cleaned this trough out because you've been waiting to do it to talk to us today.
Yes.
But why do you see it as so important to keep your troughs clean around your property? What's the real benefit?
Couple of things, Belle. You're not going to want to drink manky, stale, stagnant water. Why should your livestock?
Does it affect the gut and things?
Well, I figure clean water, healthier animals, better for my sheep, better for my goats, definitely better for my horses. The other thing we're getting an issue with around here is mozzies.
Yes, very topical at the moment.
Absolutely.
With encephalitis.
Yep. So, now our water troughs have got
floats.
Floats, thank you, Belle. I was lost for a minute there. So the water can tend to keep moving, but it doesn't take long. I've noticed the other day that a bucket that I had with water within 24 hours had mosquito larvae on the top.
Wow.
So we're just going out there with cleaning the troughs to make sure that there's no issues with the trough. I can see that the float's working properly, that there's no issue with our water. But B, so that it's clean and healthy for the animals.
Yeah. So back in the good old days when I used to run the feedlot and the confined feeding for sheep, we'd be out there every day cleaning out the troughs. Today I'm going to give you a block of copper sulphate to put in the water to help keep the algae at bay. Do you usually do that or not bother?
We try to. I buy now from our local fodder store. I'm trying to think what it's called. Is it called Tough Block? It's a block that I can drop into the trough. But to be honest with you, it's something I do need to be more aware of and stay on top of. Our troughs tend to get cleaned out weekly, if not fortnightly. So really, it's a chore for the kids.
Yes, beautiful. Well, I used to do it growing up. That was my job. Yep.
I use one of our horse brushes, so it's a good reason to, it just gives the horse brush a bit of a wash at the same time.
Oh, well done you.
Yeah, right. Yep. So, that's where we go with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all right. Excellent. Well, in a moment we will head out there and do just that. Thanks so much for having us today, Kate. It's been a lot of fun. And we look forward to enjoying some more of these cheeses and a glass of wine very soon.
Thank you, Belle.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. We hope you've really found it helpful and a little bit entertaining along the way as well. You can leave your comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on Farmcast and look for the April episode. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. Belle and I hope you found it helpful. You can leave comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on Farmcast and look for the April episode.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. CalHope can help. Access CalHope's free and secure mental health resources. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.